This podcast is brought to you by North Carolina's electric cooperatives.
This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to NC Spin. I'm Brad Crone, sitting in this week for Tom Campbell, who's on vacation. On this Memorial Day edition, we look at the growing concerns about the rising toll of student debt, local efforts to police the police, and we preview the major campaigns developing right now. Joining us on the panel this week are Becki Gray with the John Locke Foundation, John Hood, Syndicated columnist and author, Rob Schofield with NC Policy Watch, and Howard Lee, former state senator. This Memorial Day weekend, everyone at NC Spin would like to take a moment and pay tribute to the men and women who have given their lives in defense of our nation, and to say thank you to their families who have sacrificed so much. North Carolina has given many who have fought and sacrificed so that we might live in peace. This weekend, our hearts are heavy with pride and gratitude. We begin our uninterrupted debate after these brief messages from our underwriters.
They're up before dawn and work late into the night. They believe in hard work, family, and doing the right thing. They stand up for their communities when others walk away. They're good people who just want a fair shake. They are farmers. At North Carolina Farm Bureau, we are proud to stand with our farmers.
Today's tools make you a real DIYer, and as a member of an electric cooperative, you have lots of valuable tools to help you do it yourself in controlling your home energy use and budget, leaving you free to be Dad.
Partners for Innovation in Healthcare. We're supporting common sense solutions for North Carolina's healthcare delivery system, promoting access, affordability, quality care, and innovation. Visit us on the web at pihc.info.
Production underwriting provided by the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
Let's get started. Campaign 2020 is taking shape with both parties working to recruit candidates and put together a slate for next year's general election. One of the most interesting races so far is the U.S. Senate, where incumbent Thom Tillis is facing a credible primary challenger, and well, the Democrats really haven't been able to find a candidate yet. Question one to Becki: how serious should Senator Tillis take the Garland Tucker campaign?
Brett, I think any candidate, any incumbent should take a challenge very seriously, and I don't think this is any different at all. Senator Tillis has a record to run on, and we'll be hearing a lot about that. I think that Senator Tillis should look at this as an opportunity to let the voters know what he's done. He has a long record, not just in the U.S. Senate, but also in the North Carolina House. Don't forget, he was the Speaker of the House. I think to expect that he would not have a challenger for this first time that he's looking for re-election would have been totally unrealistic. And I think competition is good. I think more opportunities for voters to learn more about the candidates makes the whole process richer. And so I'm excited about this.
John, is this a philosophical fight with right wing saying we don't really like Thom Tillis, we see him as a moderate and a centrist? And will Tillis ever be able to placate the ultra conservatives?
Well, I think that people want to put the Tillis primary with Garland Tucker and perhaps others, we don't know, in a strictly ideological box. And I think it's hard to do that. If you look at what happened when Garland Tucker announced, of course, Tucker, like a lot of conservatives, had expressed concerns about Trump during the 2015-2016 period. Tillis supporters, particularly people in Congress, the people who work for the people in Congress, went in and pulled those things and called Garland Tucker an out-of-touch liberal who is against Donald Trump. Now, that is not the kind of rhetoric we would typically see in a moderate versus conservative Republican primary circa 1980 or something. It's a different thing. Both sides are claiming to be closer to Trump than the other. I think it's hard to jam that into an ideological box.
I would submit to you that the young person who wrote that press release about Garland Tucker being liberal and Carter Wren being out of touch, Carter has forgotten more about North Carolina politics than they will ever really know. Rob, let's look at the Democrat side. You have Janet Kyle being courted by the DSCC. Eric Mansfield, a former state senator, physician out of Fayetteville and here in Raleigh. State Senator Erica Smith held a campaign kickoff last week. Former State Senator Cal Cunningham is running for lieutenant governor, but is being heavily courted by the DSCC. They contend that there's polling data that Cal Cunningham would perform very well in a matchup against Thom Tillis. Where's the Democratic slate right now?
Well, I think it's a very competitive group. I mean, the reality is that Tillis himself didn't announce for 2014 until about this time in 2013, so it's not surprising that it's not clarified yet. It's a group of very strong candidates. I have to make a disclosure that Eric Mansfield, Dr. Mansfield, serves on the board of directors of the parent organization of NC Policy Watch, but I can say that they're all very competitive, strong candidates. Tillis's numbers have been around low 30s ever since he's been elected. He's a very vulnerable candidate. He won a very narrow election victory over Kay Hagan in 2014. Remember, there was the whole Ebola supposed crisis that came at the last minute that may have tipped it in his favor. So he's got a tough road to hoe whoever the Democrats nominate.
Would you say Janet Kyle and Cal Cunningham would be the top two favorites for the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee?
I think it's expected that they both will have a lot of success raising money. I think there are a lot of Democrats who think it's important that we have a very diverse ticket, that Democrats put forth a candidate of color for some high office, and I think that is it going to be an issue as well.
That's why you don't underestimate Erica Smith there either.
That's true.
Senator Howard Lee, in the scheme of national politics and state politics across the state, how do you see 2020 developing in the U.S. Senate race? Is it going to be something like we saw in 1984 with the Helms-Hunt race or in 1990 with the Gantt-Helms race? Will it be a national stage race?
I think North Carolina certainly has positioned itself to get a lot of national attention. That reason being that our state seems to be a little more balanced and more close to a purple state than many others. Therefore, people will be looking to us to hopefully bring some balance into this process. I think Tom has really missed a wonderful opportunity to show a level of strength as he performed, and I would like to have seen him be more aggressive in terms of protecting the interests of the people. But I think he's going to get a lot of national attention.
Becki, another race people are paying attention to across the state is the developing primary in the Republican Party for governor. There's talk that State Representative Holly Grange from Wilmington is planning to mount a challenge against incumbent Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest.
Yeah, I don't think it's any secret she's looking at that race. I spoke to her last week. I don't think she's made a decision for sure. But, again, Brad, this should not come as a surprise to anybody. When you look across the horizon at the rising stars in both parties, I mean, you just mentioned some of these folks that may get into the Democratic race for the U.S. Senate race. We see this. Holly Grange is a great candidate. She was one of the few women that have been through West Point. She's a veteran. She's represented her district really well with some real controversial issues, the Gen X and film credits and lots of things like that, that she would want to or look to a higher and, a statewide race. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Rob, on the Democratic presidential side, 23 candidates and counting right now, maybe 24 coming. Biden front-runner status in the state right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that he's way ahead. Sanders and he have the top name recognition. It's possible I could see one or two people emerging from the pack, but my gosh, what a scrum. I think at this point, Biden has a wellspring of support. His name recognition is high. He has the connection to Obama. I think unless something dramatic changes, he's going to have a real leg up.
As these campaigns unfold, it's going to be a really interesting summer. Let's shift to another topic. Last week, billionaire investor Robert Smith told students at Morehouse College in Atlanta that his foundation was wiping out their student loans. That's a $40 million act of generosity. It reminds us that the North Carolina State Constitution promises students an affordable tuition to our secondary schools. With graduations over, the stark reality sets in. How do students pay back their debt? Question one to Howard Lee. Senator, it seems like we're really putting it to the next generation when we saddle them with such debt to pay for college. What's the answer?
Well, I certainly think one option is for students not to think they have to go to the Cadillac colleges. They can begin their education at a community college, which is a lot cheaper and certainly won't require the mortgage of their lives. I would like to see us put a heck of a lot more emphasis on encouraging students also to recognize that they can work while they go to school. Some of us did do that. And of course, not have to borrow money to pay their tuition. So I think there are a number of options that are available, but somehow students feel that they have to be in the top institutions, and in so doing, it's going to cost a lot.
No doubt about it. Don Curtis will attest that I worked full-time at WPTF. I'll go into NC State. My tuition was $365 a semester in the early 80s. Rob, how do the millennials deal with this rising cost of college education?
Well, I'll say my tuition was $100 a trimester at UCLA back in the late 70s and early 1980s. I mean, that bespeaks the fact that we've disinvested in higher education. We're not making it as affordable as it should be. Our Constitution says as free as practicable. I mean, I think that's an incredibly important issue. There's also the issue that a lot of these loans that kids have gotten themselves into, not everybody's got a low-cost federal government guaranteed loan. A lot of kids get into high-interest credit cards, predatory loans, and the loan servicers who work on behalf of the federal government often employ predatory tactics. I mean, this is a huge crisis in our country, and I think that's one of the reasons that candidates that are pushing the idea of affordable, free public higher education, as they have in Western Europe and so many countries, are going to be met with a lot of support. I think it's the direction we need to go.
John, looking at the numbers, Forbes magazine says the average student loan debt in the state of North Carolina is $26,614. The national average, $33,310. That's a monthly loan payment of $393 a month.
Yeah, these are large numbers. Tuition in North Carolina has increased substantially over time. It is still very low by national standards. It's one of the most generously funded university systems in the country. It continues to be so. I think that the focus on which group of people pays the bill, should it be taxpayers, should it be parents and should be students later in life paying back loans, that's an important question. It's not the most important question. The most important question is, what is the cost of education, not who pays it. That's the price question. And I think that what we need to be focusing on is delivering, and Howard was talking about this in the context of community college versus a four-year school to start with, but it goes beyond that, just different ways to deliver these services so they are more affordable. Simply shifting this high bill around is not the answer.
Becki, college debt's a national issue on the economy front, on the economic front. $1.57 trillion, 5.1 million borrowers, and 1/3 of those loans right now are past due 60 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's a North Carolina problem, and it's a national problem, as you describe. I read that student loan is second only to mortgage loans, I think, now. So it's a big deal. But the thing that I think is missing in this discussion, and many discussions about this, is, Brad, you introduced this as we have saddled these students with this debt. We haven't saddled anybody with debt. Those people have made decisions, students, their families, in whatever circumstances. I think the personal responsibility piece of this, and now looking for ways to make college more affordable, like we've done in North Carolina, and I think we've done a fabulous job with our North Carolina Promise, where tuition is $500 at 3 of our universities, making community colleges an option to begin student stuff. And then the other thing, the General Assembly is going to require financial literacy as part of the curriculum in North Carolina high schools, which I think is extremely important, so that people know what they're walking into.
Value is really important, and you're correct. They made the consumer made the decision on what choice they were going to proceed with. Protesters were outside the executive mansion in Raleigh this week demanding the governor get involved in recent police shooting incidents in Charlotte and Raleigh. Last week, citizens stormed a Raleigh City Council meeting, shutting it down, demanding a citizen review panel. In Charlotte, WBTV had to sue the city to get access to a video of a police shooting earlier in the month. We're hearing more and more calls for citizen review and oversight panels at the local level. Will we police the police? Question 1 to Rob. Why do local governments oppose having a citizen police oversight panel?
Well, I mean, there was a story in Raleigh's News and Observer this week that sort of highlighted why they don't like the idea of oversight. It's natural. Who wants to have somebody looking over your shoulder, second-guessing the work you do, especially in such an important area? But the reality is that we have to. This is an area in which people are making life and death decisions. We know that young men, particularly young men of color, are being killed in this state and in this country, and it's understandable that communities feel wronged and they want to have an explanation of what the heck's going on. We know that there are citizen review panels for maybe 200 police departments around the country, not very many of the thousands that there are, and there have been mixed reviews as to how successful they are. Some people say we'd do better with an independent inspector general in some instances than having a political body, but the bottom line is if we're going to have successful policing, the police have to be able to get along with the community. They have to have faith in each other. It needs not to be an adversarial relationship. And these kinds of panels can play a role in making that happen.
John, in Nash County, the sheriff down there, Keith Stone's actually put together a citizen advisory committee, and it's been very successful. Can we replicate that model?
I think you can replicate it if you take into consideration what Rob was getting at regarding the different performance of different models across the country. We simply couldn't conclude from what we know right now, across the country at least, that these review commissions necessarily make things better. Sometimes they do, sometimes they make them worse. Because it creates additional acrimony, it makes it harder for the relationships to be developed. I think what's happening in Nash County is a more constructive approach where you really are involving the community, but you're not suggesting that police officers are going to be treated in a way that they would feel is grossly unfair. That's not going to help anybody because police officers walk into harm's way routinely, and of course that when they make mistakes they have to be held accountable for that, but they need to know that on the whole we have their back. That we're not, that police officers are in a situation where they are so scared of what might happen that they actually put people's lives at risk, which is a real danger.
Howard, what role does the governor play in this? There were people outside of the mansion twice in the last week just raising all types of sand. Do we need to hear the governor's voice here?
Well, I'm not sure that needs to happen. This is a local decision, basically, as to whether or not a community will adopt this process. I was hearing about citizen review commissions when I was mayor of Chapel Hill 50 years ago. So this is nothing new. But the thing that bothers me is people think they can set up the citizen review commission and then that solves the problem. That does not solve the problem. Citizens have to take some responsibility themselves. On the other hand, policemen are being killed every day by people in the community, and many of the citizens know who these threats are, and they don't do a thing to try to bring it to the attention of the police so they can be handled. I just think that we see these simple solutions and think that this would be the answer to all of our problems, and that's not the case.
Becki, is there any room for compromise here? Can we get to middle ground?
There's going to have to be. I mean, as Senator Lee just spoke about, there's got to be some sort of compromise. There's got to be some sort of mutual trust. I mean, if there's a core function of government that I think we can all agree on, it's public safety, is that citizens have to have the confidence in law enforcement, and law enforcement has to have the confidence in order to go into those dangerous situations and do their job. So I think we're going to have a compromise because it's in everybody's best interest to do. What we don't want to have, as you alluded to, Senator Lee, is a chilling effect of where police officers would not go into those dangerous situations where we need for them to be to ensure the safety of the communities. And at the same time, we want the citizens to have a voice in things. So we're going to have to find a compromise on this. But I think it comes back to leadership. And that's why I think we need to look at who is serving in the police chief roles, who are serving as sheriffs across the county or across the state, and law enforcement. You mentioned the governor. I think all levels of government need to be involved in
Rob,
this.
how important is going to be de-escalation in the training? When we're training young law enforcement officers, de-escalation is really important.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult job when you think about it. And the reality is that with modern technology, with everybody having a phone, everybody having a camera, people are going to be taking second and third looks. It's like sports where referees don't want to have second looks at their calls in games, but the reality, we're not going to get away from that. So there's going to have to be oversight. And yes, we're going to have to teach our law enforcement officers the reality of getting along with the community. It makes makes them safer, makes the community safer. It's a difficult task to pull off.
Something we're going to have to follow for sure. Memorial Day weekend usually signifies the start of the peak season for travel and tourism in North Carolina. Our beautiful beaches and majestic mountains are clarions for those seeking rest and refuge. Travel and tourism in North Carolina is big business. In 2017, visitors spent nearly $24 billion. That's $65 million a day, with 1 in 50 residents employed directly by travel and tourism. Question 1 to John. Clearly, North Carolina has a successful record. What's working and what can we improve?
Well, we have natural resources, assets that would be hard to mess up, though sometimes they get messed up. One of the things that's particularly important as I looked into the data about travel and tourism, of course, North Carolina is not that different from most states where travel and tourism is number 1, number 2, or number 3 because of how broadly the category is defined. But one of the things North Carolina historically did, and I think in the last number of years has gotten back into the habit, is focusing on road access. Some of the travel and tourism industries really depend upon how fast can people get somewhere. And the extent that we've been adding lanes recently, we have some bypasses around some of the major cities, that does facilitate the kind of travel and tourism that is particularly dependent upon automobile traffic.
Becki, the travel and tourism tax revenue means a $512 savings per family in the state of North Carolina. Can we grow out the industry and even save more?
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's important that the state have a role in this, in promoting tourism. If you haven't, go to Visit NC website. There's just a wealth of information on there. Our tourism dollars have increased every year for, I don't know how, probably as long as they've been keeping records. The General Assembly asked the Program Evaluation Division to look at that, to do a study of commerce and the private-public partnerships that we have, and the PED report came back with a couple interesting things. One, to eliminate some of the administrative cost in the tourism offices. The administrative costs were duplicative in many cases. You know, you could use those dollars for something else. And then, interestingly enough, the Farm Bill this year that is just beginning to get some attention in the Senate would add shooting sports, sportsman-like things, fishing, hunting as part of agribusiness, and focusing on that as well, which I think that when you look around the country and a lot of people like to do those kind of activities, I think our trout streams will compete with any in the country. We ought to make use of it.
Rob, natural resource is an important part of our travel and tourism industry.
Yeah, I mean, we can't talk about this issue without talking about the environmental crisis that our state is in the midst of. Some of our beaches are going to be underwater in a few decades. I mean, this is an existential crisis we face environmentally, and it's preposterous to talk about our beaches, our mountains, the deforestation that's going on there, talk about the poisoning of our waters in this state that's going on. We've got to get a focus on that, or there isn't going to be a travel and tourism industry.
Senator, you really, as Secretary of Diener back in Jim Hunt's first administration, really put our state parks on the map.
Absolutely, and I think one thing that we can be very proud of is that we do have a great variety of opportunities for people to come and enjoy the state of North Carolina. Traveling here this morning on Interstate 40, I didn't feel we have a shortage of tourism because the traffic was really horrendous, but I think that's wonderful. But look at all of the resources we have that are available for people to come and visit and see. But I think Rob is correct as well. We do really need to be vigilant on protecting our environment. I had that problem when I was Secretary of Natural Resources, trying to protect many of the streams because we were dumping poison into the waters. I think the state has shown remarkable progress in trying to tackle that problem.
And just this week we had news reports about concerns about some of the fisheries in the Neuse River. Clearly 37 million travelers on our roads this weekend, so it's going to be a busy travel and tourism weekend for sure. We remind people to be safe out there on the roads. Now it's time for the show for our panelists to tell us something we don't know. I'll start with Senator Lee.
Well, 50 years ago, I got elected mayor of Chapel Hill, which was a proud moment of my life. But the point I want to make is that I was invited back to my alma mater, one of those cheap colleges in South Georgia, and they honored me with naming a road in my honor. And I've never seen my name on a road sign before. That was quite gratifying.
Congratulations. John, tell us something we don't know.
The most recent Civitas poll asked a couple of interesting questions about the long-running Robert Mueller investigation. On the one hand, most North Carolina voters, a plurality at least, showed approval of Robert Mueller's performance in his independent counsel role, but also a plurality of North Carolinians think that it got too much attention, that the issue has gotten too much news media coverage over the last 2 years. That's an interesting juxtaposition of beliefs, but I think not necessarily inconsistent.
Rob, tell us something we don't know.
It's Memorial Day weekend. Tens of thousands of North Carolina veterans, because we have VA benefits for most veterans, but tens of thousands are still in the coverage gap. If we would expand Medicaid coverage in this state, as has been done in 30-plus states around the country, they and their families could get health care, and they've had much better results for veterans in these other states where they've taken that step. It's something we ought to do in North Carolina.
Becki?
A bill moving through the Senate this week is the Regulatory Reform Act of 2019. When Republicans took over the General Assembly in 2011, Senator Berger introduced the Regulatory Reform Act of 2011 and said there would be one every single year until regulations were off the backs of government or government was off the backs of businesses and people across North Carolina. He's made good on that, and this latest bill came up. Regulations have a cost, and getting rid of them and loosening those is the thing to do.
All right, thank you. One closing comment. We would like to extend our sympathies to the families of longtime Orange County Sheriff Lindy Pendergrass and former Dunn Mayor and Harnett County Commissioner Abe Elmore, who both passed away this week. Both men were true public servants and always loyal to the state of North Carolina. We extend heartfelt thanks for their service. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, to give your feedback and read Tom's weekly column, visit our website at ncspin.com or catch NC Spin on Facebook. Join us next week when we'll have more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
They're up before dawn and work late into the night. They believe in hard work, family, and doing the right thing. They stand up for their communities when others walk away. They're good people who just want a fair shake. They are farmers. At North Carolina Farm Bureau, we are proud to stand with our farmers.
Today's tools make you a real DIYer, and as a member of an electric cooperative, you have lots of valuable tools to help you do it yourself in controlling your home energy use and budget, leaving you free to be Dad.
Partners for Innovation in Healthcare. We're supporting common sense solutions for North Carolina's healthcare delivery system, promoting access, affordability, quality care, and innovation. Visit us on the web at pihc.info.
Production underwriting provided by the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.